Hello, everybody, and welcome to Off the Cuff with Alex and Will. I'm Alex.
I'm Will.
One day we're going to get that on time.
I didn't know we were doing that. I mean, I didn't know. You have to tell me ahead of time that I have to throw my own stuff up there. I was just waiting for you to introduce me.
Sometimes you really got to spell things out for us. We're not the sharpest tools.
Well, especially for me. I think you're a little sharper than I am. I have no problem admitting that. So you definitely got to spell it out for me. I'm definitely not the sharpest tool in the tool shed. So.
But we're glad to be back for week 2 of Off the Cuff. And you might be watching us on Facebook, might be watching us on YouTube, or you could be watching us on X, Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it.
I'm officially X now. Everything on my phone is X. It's X on my computer. It's X, man.
Yeah, birds aren't real. No more birds.
There's no more tweeting.
But we've got a full show for you today because, college football is continuing to unravel or change or grow for the better, whatever it is. It's continuing to do it this week. A ton of conference realignment news all over the place this week. Rumors, speculation, some truth, some untruth. Depends on, I guess, what athletic directors and presidents and commissioners want reporters to know. So I think we'll have a little bit more clarity in the next 2 weeks, but we're going to talk about some scenarios and what could be going down in college football over the next couple weeks. We've also got, fall camp has started at a lot of places already and is starting at Clemson tomorrow. So a ton of stuff to talk about that. I mean, football season it feels like when fall camp starts, that's when it's really there. It feels like it started with talking season, but once fall camp hits the ground when people are hitting each other, that's when football has really begun.
Yeah, and it kind of for Clemson, it's officially begun. The players reported today for fall camp, and then did their annual weigh-in as well. We're gonna kind of go through those a little bit, kind of give some people some updates on what Tiger looks this way or looks that way. We know how you guys love that stuff, man, and hey, that's okay. That's what we're here for. You guys like to see how these guys have progressed over the summer. We're going to give you that information that came out earlier today as well. We got the all preseason ACC team was announced. You see, we got that scrolling across the bottom of the screen. The ACC also earlier this week released their 2023 preseason
Will's
poll.
living in the past.
Yeah, I am. I remember 2003.
ACC and Pac-12 were thriving in 2003.
Yes, they were. But we got the preseason poll as well. We'll talk about that, and maybe Alex, where I had teams ranked. We can talk about where I ranked them, and so we got a lot of good stuff to go along today, and so we're glad to have you guys here. If you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. We greatly appreciate that. Click the thumbs up because the more of you guys do that, the better it helps our algorithm, obviously, and the more people get to watch it and see what we're doing. I think if you're on Facebook and on YouTube, we should be able to see your comments. So comment if you got questions for us. About anything, college football, anything about the NFL. Hey, look, NFL training camps are in full bloom. Actually, tonight, Alex, the football game even is going on. So got a lot of stuff going on.
Football season.
It is
really
officially
football
season. It really is. So, so we'll be happy to talk to all you guys. Just give us a holler.
Well, let's just go ahead and jump right in here. I guess we can. Let's start with fall camp because fall camp starts tomorrow, and we'll get to conference realignment here a little bit later, give you guys a reason to stick around for a few extra minutes to hear our opinions on that. But I guess for starters, Will, was there anything that stood out to you today from Clemson's weigh-in?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, Clemson had its weigh-in in advance of camp, which begins tomorrow. Just, so just some names, I guess alphabetically, so you can kind of go down through it. Clemson running back Keith Adams, 217 pounds. He checked in. Let's see, Barrett Carter, Alex, 231 pounds. It's kind of where you want him to be, I think. Bo Collins, wide receiver, at 212 pounds. Tyler Davis checking in at 302 pounds. Let's see, as we go scroll on down the list here.
The one I was probably most interested to see was probably Cade Klubnik, and that's probably what a lot of Clemson fans were.
205 pounds for Cade Klubnik. And by the way, before we get into that, and we'll talk about that just a second here, but also this is big. Shaheem Lawson, the kid from Daniel who redshirted last year, he was 210 pounds when he came to Clemson last year. Alex, he's already up to 240 pounds. He checked into that 240.
That's what that discipline in the weight room will do for you over the course of a year.
That is Joey Batson's weight training right there at its finest. So there's some numbers. We'll get to some more here in a second. But yeah, you want to talk about Cade Klubnik checking at 205 pounds. I still think he probably needs another 7 to 10 pounds. But hey, it's better than the 190 he was last year.
Yeah, I mean, you could see it at points last year when he wasn't as ready to get in. You know, like the Syracuse game. Just you could see that he needed to put a little bit extra weight on. We heard Dabo talking about it at the ACC football kickoff. I'm sure he talked about it with you guys at the media day as well, that he put on some good weight. I think Dabo said that he put it on his backside. I think it's the way that he phrased it. But, you know, that's always good to have a little bit of extra weight back there to be able to hold your own, you know, maybe weather some hits a little better. So
yeah, if
hopefully
you fall
that
on
gives
your butt, that's definitely going to help it.
Yeah, it's going to help you if you get sacked, you know. But hopefully it just all of this, you know, putting on the extra weight, honestly, it can do just as much for you mentally as it does physically, knowing that you're stronger and being able to quantify it. You know, thankfully, me and Will didn't have to weigh in today for the start of Off the Cuff, because I don't know if we would want to look back at a year ago.
I think let's see, who would I have weighed in by? I don't have no problem saying it. I would have weighed in. I'm definitely going to weigh in more than Cade Klubnik. I'll tell you that much. Let's see. There's a couple guys.
There are a few that are in the ballpark of me.
Maybe Jamal Anderson at 214. Yeah.
Hey,
I'm right.
You know how much I weigh?
Sitting right there.
I weigh exactly as much as Wade Wood has right now. His is not better than mine. I can tell you that. His is going to serve him a lot better on the football field than mine would right now.
Yeah, so Wade Wood, in case you guys are wondering, is 232 pounds is what Alex is saying. So I'm at 214, 215 range. You know, I'm sitting right there. Hey, darn, man, I'm bigger than Tyler Venables. He checked in at 205, but of course he hasn't been able to train because of his injury to his hip. So that explains why he's down. Dabo talked about how much weight he lost, so that was going to be part of it when you don't work out. Peter Woods, by the way, Alex, checking in at 316 pounds today. That's a good Christian Wilkins size, as I like to say.
Yeah.
You know, for a guy that tall, and you know, that's a good size right there for a defensive lineman at 316 pounds. So he definitely is going to be effective inside that defensive line area. Looking for Rook Aurora. Let's see what Root checked in at today, because we said Tyler Davis is at 302.
Root's at 291.
291. Wow. You talking about being slimmed up in the middle. Those two guys. Hey, by the way, Peyton Page, 308 pounds.
Yeah.
This guy last couple years ago, Peyton Page 2 years ago, Alex, when he checked in, let's just say he was closer to 400 than he was 300.
Whew.
Yeah, so good to see him at 300 pounds. Xavier Thomas. Let's see how Xavier Thomas wanted to be somewhere around 250. Let's see where we're at with Mr. Thomas here. Here we go, down here.
Thankfully, they allow you to sort this by position.
243 pounds for Xavier Thomas.
Wow,
that's good. That's about where you wanted him to be. He liked to be somewhere between 245 and 250, but Xavier Thomas, that tells me he's going to be playing around that 250 mark when the season starts. Because, you know, when you get into the season, you're not working out every day like that. So, you know, you're playing what we call playing weight.
Right.
Troy Stellato checked in at 187 pounds. That's not good.
Yeah, that's kind of really what stands out to you when you look at these. The weigh-ins is usually the bad numbers stand out a lot more than the good ones.
Right.
Because you expect guys at certain positions to weigh within a certain range. So really the only ones that you notice are guys that come in chunky or come in skinny.
Right. Antonio Williams, by the way, 195 pounds. I think that's about where you'd like to see maybe another 5 pounds on, be right at 200. You know, Phil Moffa, I haven't found him yet. Let's see, Mr. Moffa checked in at
227.
There you go. Okay. That's about what they want him to be. not too big. He's at that. He's a power runner. They want him down the goal line. Will
Adam Randall at
Shipley.
two. Adam Randall at 224.
Will Shipley at 210 pounds. There we go. Adam
Boom.
Randall 224. I'm telling you, man, is that Mike Williams' desk or what?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely looking that way. And obviously, you've got a lot closer look, and you're going to get a better look tomorrow when you get to go out to the. Are you going to be able to go to the beginning of practice?
I'll be there, man. I'm going to be there for the whole thing. Starts with Dabo Sweeney. Then we get to go to practice, and then we get players afterwards. So, yeah, pretty excited about all that. Looking for one more guy I'm interested in seeing that really kind of – and then we'll move on here. One other guy would be Jake Briddingstool, 232 pounds for Mr. Briddingstool. That's good to see right there because, he's not going to be your typical let's line him up and block kind of tight end like you saw with Davis Allen last year. I think Mr. Briddingstool, I think in this offense, he's going to be spread out. He's going to be sitting there in that slot or maybe outside playing the boundary or the field side from time to time, how they're going to use him. They're going to try to use him the way Richardson was telling us. They're going to try to use him in a lot of different ways this year. Also, Jeremiah Trotter checked in at 230 pounds. So these Clemson linebackers look like they're going to be in good shape, it looks like, Alex.
As expected. That's a group that you didn't want to look at the weigh-in sheet and worry about because they have pretty high expectations around that unit this year for the Tigers, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun for people to watch on the field this fall if those guys can stay healthy, because depth is still a bit of a question, especially with the TJ Dudley situation and hopping over to Ole Miss eventually, it seems. But
yeah,
it's going to be interesting to see how they fill that depth and how some of those young guys step up.
Yeah, linebacking depth is going to be a concern. So, you're going to have McLeod that's going to have to, I think, be ready to go. They thought he made some good steps, but they weren't counting on him being in the middle. They were counting on him being more of like on the weak side. But he's going to have to probably play both. I think you're going to see Wood as used as both a Sam and also as a weak side backer. So they're going to have to do some mixing and matching guys that I think you may see Barrett Carter also helping out with depth, playing the different positions. So what I'm telling you is if the linebackers stay healthy, they're going to be on the field a long time, which is not good because the longer you're on the field, the more chance you can get hurt. So basically if you're Clemson, you want them to get 3 and out and punt the ball and that be the kind of thing you want, because then that'll help you because get a 3 and out every time they're on the field. Maybe 12 shutouts this season. That'll work. If they do that, they'll be fine.
Yeah, if they do that, then no problem, right?
No problem. Depth should be not an issue at all if they can shut out all 12 opponents. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, obviously, linebacker depth is going to be a thing that you're going to be looking at fall camp the next couple of weeks to see how that develops. What are some other things that maybe on day one? What are you looking at day one? When you step out on the field for individual workouts?
Yeah, that's a great question. First thing I'm doing, I'm going on over to Adam Randall. We just saw he checked in at 224 pounds. I want to see where he's at mentally with that knee, because last year you could tell it bothered him during the season. And I don't know how much of that was bothered from the fact that he just was hurt and it was kind of bothering him, or was he worried about it being hurt? So I want to see where he's at mentally. And I really would love to watch that first practice when they actually put on the pads, full pads. Tomorrow they'll be basically in shells tomorrow. And so that's kind of what I want to do that. And then I'm going to go watch the defensive ends. I want to see what XT looks like in person. We've seen him on Twitter, man, where he's just killing people, and looking good. Looks like the old XT out there. So I want to see what he looks like in person myself. And then, I want to see those young guys like a Cade Deedhoff. Is he ready? What does he look like? Zaire Patterson, is he ready? TJ Parker, man, what's he going to look like? Because, we've heard all these great things about him. I want to watch him work now after a whole summer, being at working with the summer workouts and things of that nature. So, and then, of course, Peter Woods. We all want to see Peter Woods. I mean, he's the big guy coming in. He's the big news story, if you will. I'm gonna, in the cornerback situation, I'm looking, at Terrell. the freshman, younger brother of AJ Terrell. He's going to, he seems like he's got a lot of confidence. You're talking about a guy that loves Clemson. This kid, I talked to him a few weeks ago at the freshman event. That all Clemson, that's all Clemson. That what's it called?
Dear old Clemson.
Dear old Clemson. The NIL was holding. Apologize for that, but they were holding the event, and so I got to talk to him, and he's like, dude, he loves Clemson. He said, man, he fell in love with it when his brother was here. And he's like, I always wanted to play at Clemson. I didn't want to go play anywhere else. I just wanted to be a Clemson Tiger. And so he's excited. He can't wait to get in and start competing. So, yeah, I think the freshmen are the biggest draw on the first day, right? You want to see what the freshmen look like. So that's going to be interesting to see how they look and what they're doing.
Yeah, that was always the thing that I was most interested in when I stepped on the field for fall camp was first of all seeing the attitude.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're going to step out in the indoor facility on the new turf, and you're going to hear the boys are back in town playing, and you just kind of want to see those intangible things, the attitude, the way.
That's how we should have started the show with the boys and back in town.
Oh man,
that should have been our music. Let's restart it. Let's go.
Hindsight's 2020. Hindsight's 2020. No, but yeah, that's the other thing is that you're always looking at those intangibles. You know, how are those young players relating to the coaches? You know, there's always some of those young guys who are out there and, you know, they're running over to the side dying. You know, they're looking for a trash can to maybe get rid of some excess. But that's always something to look for. And then what other guys that are those younger dudes are just, you know, fitting right into the system and look like they've been there for years. I think, Will, you had kind of a famous or infamous impression of one Clemson player the first time that you saw him at fall camp, but I will let you tell that story. I'm not going to.
Or we just won't talk about it at all because I was totally wrong on that, and we're just going to let that die, if you will.
We're not getting that off the cuff today.
No, we are not. So, you know, it's not going to let that at all. We're not going to talk about that off. We're not going to get too far off the cuff with that. We'll let it be. I think the people probably out there that are watching us that know, they know. So, you know.
If you know, you know.
Exactly.
That's what we'll stick with on that one. Again, we want to remind you guys that if you're interested in being a sponsor of the show, you can email us offthecuffsn@gmail.com. That's what all of our socials are as well. offthecuffsn. We're on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, X. We're on all of them. So give us a follow. Also, if you're following along with us on YouTube or Facebook, you can get in with a comment. If you're following along on Twitter, you can send a DM to Will or I, and we'll be able to get your questions that way as well. But let's get into what the people really want to talk about this week. And that is all of the insanity that continues with conference realignment. Obviously, some big news kind of circulating this week and some rumors. But it's even kind of hard to call them rumors now when you've got the Florida State Board of Trustees meeting yesterday and saying that it's not if, it's when. And talking about how leaving the ACC is a foregone conclusion for them. And then, you know, tonight, some big meetings happening. The University of Washington, their Board of Regents is meeting tonight. The Arizona Board of Regents that oversees the University of Arizona and Arizona State is meeting tonight about potential moves and exploring what their options are in terms of getting out of the Pac-12. So just a lot of craziness, and the Pac-12 media deal is kind of stoking the fire in a lot of ways. They announced that they're going to pursue a venture with Apple, which seems to be a forward-thinking idea, but the problem is they don't have concrete numbers to give the schools about how much money they're going to make. So for an athletic department that's planning for an entire calendar year and trying to plan things years in advance, that's not really going to sit well.
No, it's not. No, it's not. I mean, everything right now, Alex, is very fluid, as you know. I mean, we've been hearing about Florida State and Clemson. Let's be honest, it's going on 2 years now. I mean, these two programs have not been happy for a long time. Florida State has been very outspoken about it through everything, and that's the case yesterday when they came out and they had board of directors talking. They got other people talking, and it's like, I'm surprised about it because I don't understand what the play is to do that at that point, to be honest with you, because I think everybody knew what they were going to talk about. And then you got this news breaking about the Big 12 and possibly, as you mentioned, Utah and Arizona State going over there. And we got the news maybe possibly that I think Nicole Arabic reported today that the Big Ten is looking into adding Washington and Oregon. Oh, hello. Like we didn't know that already out there. But I'm glad you're looking into it, Big Ten. So, yeah, just a lot of stuff is going on. And so what is the Pac-12 going to look like? Because right now they're the Pac-7. And after tonight, they could be the Pac-6, depending on, or the Pac-4. They may, conceivably by time we wake up tomorrow morning. Now, I don't think it's going to happen because I don't think anybody's going to make any announcements today. But conceivably.
But we could get to a point where that's reality and not just
tomorrow morning. It could be reality. We'll wake up in the morning that there is no more Pac-12, that it will be gone after next season. After this football season, after this academic year, it'll be gone because all their schools, except for 4, will be gone. I mean, it's nuts to think about that. And then the ACC, it's sitting over there like, the ACC's like, that horror movie where the one person just got chopped up and the other one's just waiting to see what's going to happen to him. That's where that's where the ACC is right now.
The ACC's the girl that's hiding behind like a bicycle in the corner, not enough to be out of sight, but that's the only thing that you can see to brace yourself. And the bicycle seems to be like it might be the grant of rights.
Right. I don't know. The other person's just getting slaughtered. It's just like it's already over. That's the Pac-12. It's over. It's getting slaughtered. And the ACC's over there like, I hope they don't see me. Oh my God. And crying and scared because right now, the ACC is they have to be concerned about not just what Florida State's done, but like if Clemson, Florida State leave, then it's going to be the dominoes are going to fall in the ACC like we've just seen in the Pac-12.
I mean, it's going to be a disaster. And it was kind of interesting today. I saw an interesting quote from North Carolina AD Bubba Cunningham. He was on a radio show and said, I don't think it's good for our league for Florida State, parentheses, to be out there barking like that. I'd rather see them be a good member of the league, support the league. And if they have to make a decision, then so be it. Pay the exit fee, wait for the grant of rights, for your grant of rights that you've given. And then in 2036, when those rights return to you, do whatever you want. And that seems like kind of an interesting comment, especially coming from.
He's saying wait till 2036?
Yeah, that's what he said. He said, leave, pay your exit fee, and wait for your rights in 2036.
But Mr. Cunningham understands that the reason Florida State hadn't left yet isn't because Florida State scared or they were scared of the. I hear this the grant of rights is the only thing holding the ACC together. No, I'm telling you right now, folks, that's not the only thing that's holding it together. What's holding it together right now? The fact that Clemson and Florida State haven't been invited anywhere yet. Yeah, that's what's holding it together.
The invitation.
They're waiting on the invitation. They have to get the invitation first. So everybody's like, well, why hadn't Florida State left yet? Well, because they can't.
You can't just go join another conference without being invited.
Right. You can't just crash Florida State can't just say, knock on the door. Hello, SEC. We're coming in. No, it don't work that way. They have to be invited by either the Big Ten or the SEC. So the reason Florida State hasn't left, and Bubba Cunningham knows this, he knows how it works. You know why he knows how it works? Because he's also been looking for the last 2 years. Don't act like you haven't done anything either, North Carolina.
Let's not act like North Carolina's lawyers hadn't made the short trip down to the conference office to look at the grant of rights either.
Exactly.
Let's not act like they weren't in the group of schools that was turning things upside down at the spring meetings. So it's
North
a little
Carolina
sanctimonious.
Is part of the Magnificent Seven, okay?
It's a little sanctimonious for him to go out there and say that today. And the thing about this is a lot of these schools are thinking the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, everybody knows that. It's been reported. It's out there. And if you don't believe it, then you're burying your head in the sand. All these schools are thinking the same thing. what's been interesting for me this week is to see the different strategies that the schools are taking. Not hearing any news out of Clemson.
Nope.
North Carolina's defending the conference to the media today, and Florida State's holding a board meeting and in public minutes saying the ACC sucks and we want out. I mean, that's the difference in strategies is really interesting, and to think that there's not reasoning behind all of those strategies, I think would be a little naive.
Well, I think Clemson has always been, when Clemson does stuff, Clemson does things that are to take care of Clemson. So for people out there to understand, Clemson isn't quiet because it's not doing anything. Clemson's very active behind the scenes. I can tell you that right now. They're basically just waiting for an invitation. I'm just be honest with you. That's basically what's happening for Clemson, okay? It's not grant of rights or what are they going to do with the grant of rights? No. People telling you the grant of rights are holding people back is not what holding people back, as we said earlier, okay? Clemson's done their due diligence. They've been waiting, but they're just not coming out and saying things. They're staying quiet. Why is that? They're probably out there, Alex, why is that, right? Why does Clemson not say anything? Because Clemson feels like it's better to know where you're going and what you're going to do. Is the way Clemson's always done things before they go and put it out there.
Yep. And
it's just they also rather tell their people, such as their board members, their president, their athletic director, the main boosters and donors, they want to tell them first because those are the people that invest the most into Clemson. And that's always been important to Clemson. Understand what Clemson's roots are, and you understand why Clemson does things the way they do. It's a military school by root. And if you know anything about the military, there's the way you do things. And one way you don't do things is the way Florida State does things. And that's just come out and start just blaring everything out. And I'm really surprised Florida State did that. And I'm surprised North Carolina is taking up with the ACC. Like, come on, really, North Carolina? Nobody in the conference is happy. I'm sorry. Nobody's happy about the ACC right now.
And it's one thing if you're, a school that doesn't have another option, not to throw anybody under the bus, but if you're one of the schools, Wake Forest, if you're Wake Forest, you're going to be defending the conference because it's your lifeline.
Correct.
But North Carolina can succeed without being in the ACC, and they know that, and Bubba Cunningham knows that. Exactly. So for him to go out and defend the conference, it just seems, I don't know, it's not naive because it's intentional, but it seems like tongue in cheek. The way that he defended the ACC today.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It was it's just, I don't know, man. Maybe somebody asked him to do it. I don't know. I understand the conference coming out and saying, last week Commissioner Phillips saying we're all united. How's that looking a week later, Mr. Phillips, or Dr. Phillips, I should say? Because at Florida State just proved you're not all united. You're not together as one.
And I talked about this on another show earlier this week with Dan Toratora in Syracuse, talking about Jim Phillips, and we touched on it a little bit last week. But the last 2 years, getting up at the ACC football kickoff and singing "Kumbaya" to the media, it just seems hokey. Because it's not reality.
Sorry for
and
Jim,
I don't think that
it does.
I don't think that Jim Phillips is that detached from reality to get up and act like everybody's working together and this revenue sharing plan is going to do so much for us and helping everybody out. To act like that's reality just seems, I don't know, it seems tacky to me.
No, I'm with you. And look, you could tell last week that Dr. Phillips had a lot of stuff on his mind. Okay, because obviously he's got what's going on at Northwestern, and he's in the middle of that lawsuit and stuff like that. And he comes right out and says, I can't comment on any of that. I get that. And then he's got all this going on, and he knows what Florida State's doing, what Clemson's doing, what North Carolina's doing. He knows what's going on behind the scenes with these schools and what they're trying to do and maybe what they're going to do. And Alex, one way I could tell that was, you've gone to the ACC Media Days. You understand how it works and how what's the word I'm looking for? how easy it is to talk to the commissioner. How
it's
they're
familial.
Right
they're
yeah,
very accessible.
They're very accessible. There's the word, right there with us. At dinner and stuff like that. So on Tuesday night at dinner, they're having the commissioners there with us. Well, then after he gets done eating later that night, we see him in the lobby with his suitcase, checking out, heading out wherever he's heading out. And I'm sure he's got things he has to do, work stuff, whether it's what's ever going on at Northwestern. But I think a lot of it's what's going on trying to save this conference. And he probably is doing everything he can to save this conference. But I don't know what they can do, Alex. I really don't, because we just mentioned if Clemson, Florida State go, and everything we've heard and you've heard and everybody that knows that's out there is reported, Clemson, Florida State is going to be a package deal. So when one goes somewhere, the other's coming with them. So you're going to lose two right there. Okay. And then, like I said, I think the domino effect starts. What does North Carolina do? What does Miami do? What does Virginia do? And let's not forget about this thing called the Big 12 out here, who's already just eaten just basically has went all T-Rex on the Pac-12, right?
Yeah.
But, they want to be a super conference too. Like everybody's like, everybody's talking about, it's going to be a Power 2. It's going to be the Big 10 and the SEC. The Big 12's like, not so fast, my friend.
The Big 12 is making moves. They're being aggressive.
They're being very aggressive.
The reason the ACC cannot be aggressive, A, who are you going to add? But B, is a grant of rights. Because you open that grant of rights for renegotiation to get a new deal and add new teams, and Clemson and Florida State are gone. And North Carolina's gone, and Miami's probably gone.
Everybody's gone.
Everybody's gone.
And the thing is, who's going to join the ACC to save it? There's only one team that could truly save it, and that's Notre Dame. Because nobody's going to get excited if West Virginia comes into the ESPN's going to be like, hey, West Virginia's joined your conference. Good job. We're going to keep the same contract, though. Nobody out there is going to move the needle, if you will, other than Notre Dame. And Notre Dame ain't coming to the ACC. Jim Phillips said that last week. It ain't happening. It ain't going to happen.
And we talked about this week as well. Jim Phillips was brought in as the commissioner of the ACC for one reason. It was to get Notre Dame to join the conference.
As a full-time member. Yep.
As a full-time member, joining in football. And he hasn't been able to do it. And that's going to be it's not going to be what sinks the ACC, because I think what's going to sink the ACC is going to be the grant of rights. It's going to be the deal that John Swofford made. Mm-hmm. But that's going to be the final nail in the coffin, is that they weren't able to get Notre Dame to join as a football member.
And here's the thing. Remember the Magnificent Seven? Remember the Magnificent Seven just didn't happen. There's a reason why people reported it. People wanted it out there. Here's why. Here's my theory, okay? So if Clemson and, people said, Will, but the grant of rights, what are they going to do? Oh my gosh, the grant of rights is going to sink them. They can't let the ACC have their grant of rights till 2036. I'm like, don't you think Clemson knows that? Don't you think Florida State understands that? Do you think they're going to come out there and leave without having a solution to that? Or at least an idea of where they're going to go when they cross that bridge?
Yeah.
Yes, they are. And here's the thing, Alex. Here's what I think. This is just my opinion, my 2 cents, my coming off my dumb head, okay? I think what they're going to do is I think the domino effects will take place. Clemson, Florida State, and then boom, the dominoes are going to start falling. And I think then North Carolina takes off. I think Miami takes off. You don't think Dan Radakovich and Graham Neth ain't talking?
I would imagine that they probably communicate.
I'm sure they do.
One of them was the other's boss for years.
Right. So there's your 4 big brands, right? We just named the 4 big brands. Okay, so they're gone, right, in this scenario. Now you got Virginia. Well, if North Carolina's going, Virginia's going to want to go because there is a academic connection. There's things like that. Plus, here's the thing. I'm going to lay out this scenario. Okay, so I don't know where North Carolina goes or where Miami goes. SEC, Big Ten, I don't know. Same with Clemson, Florida State. But here's where I think teams like Virginia and Duke and Syracuse and Pittsburgh and you see where I'm going here.
Oh, I know where you're going.
Okay, so I just named 5 teams right there, right? Those 5 teams, and there's one more. I can't remember who it is. What's another? The Big 12 has come out, and they've made a point that when building this super conference that they're building, and right now, if everything goes to plan, they might have 18 teams by the end of tomorrow night in their conference for next year.
Yeah,
they're really playing the fact that they want to be, they want to also have the basketball power. So if you got Kansas already on, you've already locked in Kansas, and if you can tie in Duke, Syracuse, there's word that they could bring Connecticut over from the Big East.
NC State, a traditional
NC State,
traditionally good at basketball.
Well, if those 5-6 teams leave in the ACC, along with Clemson, North Carolina, Florida State, and Miami, well, Alex, that's 10 teams. Guess what? There is no grant of rights because there ain't nobody in the conference. The conference is gone. There's no grant of rights. Grant of rights doesn't matter. I mean, they could probably, ESPN could come in and say, well, this, whatever, y'all agree. But the conference, I think the conference is dissolved at that point. It's not going to exist. So the grant of rights are going to be done. So Clemson and Florida State, they got to worry about the grant of rights. That's what people don't get. It's like,
no, that's the part of the equation that people don't understand. And I saw a super long thread from a reporter about the grant of rights today. Yeah. And this part of it wasn't included, is that if all these schools decide to leave and there's no longer an ACC, there's no longer a contract with the ACC. Correct. What TV deal, what grant of rights, what payout? ESPN's going to cancel the contract if all the schools leave and there's nobody to pay. There's no return on investment.
There's no and that's it. That's my theory of what some of the thinking might be. It's a theory. Like I said, I haven't talked to anybody or asked anybody that. I'm just looking at it like common sense wise. If all these schools leave, there is no ACC. So it doesn't matter about the grant of rights. And does ESPN want that to happen? Maybe. Because if you don't remember, ESPN's in pretty tough financial situation right now.
Well, that's one thing about this conversation. That's also, some people have touched on it. I think Brett McMurphy was tweeting about it today. Brett McMurphy about how ESPN and Disney are in a interesting situation right now. I mean, people are talking about Apple potentially buying out Disney. Mm-hmm. So that might be a lifeline for ESPN, but I mean, it's really shaky ground for them right now. And that also makes this conversation interesting in terms of Clemson and Florida State. Where do you want to go? I mean, these conferences extending invitations, they're not going to extend an invitation unless they can make more money too.
Right.
So that's the SEC.
Clemson... Go ahead.
If you're the SEC, are you going to be able to get enough money for this TV deal added in to add a couple more big schools right now? Or is Fox going to be willing to pay it with the Big Ten? That's the question.
That's the question, and that's why Clemson and Florida State haven't been invited anywhere, because that is the question. ESPN, first of all, there's two folds to this. Like, one, they're looking at like, well, we could go ahead and dissolve the ACC, and then like we save money there, saves us millions and millions of dollars because we get rid of the network, we get rid of the conference, we don't got to worry about paying that bill. Everything's done, right? That's 40 plus million. What was it last year? Like, what was the ACC's? It was like what, $600 million or something like that. Well, that's 600. I think 400 of it was the ACC, was the network and stuff. That's $400 million. ESPN don't have to pay. That's a lot of money.
17 million was the ACC.
617
revenue
million. Okay,
last
year. So about 400 of it or so was about from the television revenue. Okay, so boom, you're saving almost $400 million right off the bat if you get rid of the ACC. Another thing to look at is, though, do they want to kill their investment? That's the other side to look at it. So, and what I mean by that is the ESPN played a big role. And you know how you see Clemson play Boston College at Boston College on ESPN Plus? You know how you see that, Alex, in baseball? Well, because ESPN went to Boston College and they gave Boston College all this equipment. All this television producing equipment and cameras and stuff like that so they can do that. Clemson bought a lot of theirs, so there's not as much. Clemson's kind of its own. But that's sort of the things they've done as an investment, right? So they're trying to get a return on investment. And if you get rid of the ACC, then that's a dilemma. So there could be some of this also on the other side of it where, like, well, the SEC maybe would like to put Clemson and Florida State in, but ESPN could be on the other side saying, if you do that, it's going to kill our deal with ACC. So there's that kind of tug of war going on, if you will. And then over on the other side, you got the Big Ten, and the Big Ten's dilemma is not that. The Big Ten dilemma is like, okay, how they're asking, what does Clemson and Florida State bring to the table for us?
Right.
And I think that's where it is more with them. And I think from a TV revenue standpoint and recruiting, and it's going to help all sports, I think I think bringing Clemson and them do it. The SEC
You've got a place where
want.
You have a place where you can play baseball and softball in February.
The SEC does not want does not want the Big Ten to get its footprint in the Southeast. They don't. And so that's why they're waking up right here. And they're like, hold on, Clemson and Florida State, what? Okay, maybe we need to listen. And they're picking up their pens and they're doing whatever they need to do. And the reason that's a big deal is because basically outside of Ohio State and Michigan, nobody in the Big Ten can really come down south and steal players. Not top-of-the-line players. Those are the only two schools that really do it on a consistent basis, right? And so if the Big Ten gets in here, not only is Ohio State and Michigan now going to get even more of a foothold where they can come in and say, hey, look, we're going to play at Clemson and we're going to play at Florida State, or, you can, your mama can come see you, bring your whole family. That's going to be a recruiting tool.
Yeah, it's a huge recruiting tool.
And all the other schools are going to use that same recruiting tool to get other players. So I'm not saying they're going to raid it. The conference is going to raid, because they're not, because the SEC is still going to be the stronghold here. But they haven't been able to get in here at all in the past. Now they're going to have a way to get in. And then you still got to deal with Clemson and Florida State.
Yeah.
On the recruiting trail. And I'm not just talking football. I'm talking also other sports. As you mentioned, baseball's one. Basketball. This is something the Big Ten's never had that area. And then, now let's talk about it on a money standpoint. All right, so Clemson last year ranked 10th nationally in views in college football and viewers watching the games. 2.5
the Greenville Spartanburg market is second only per capita.
Second or third,
Alabama.
Yeah. Second or third on a college football Saturday. Let's put it in perspective of what they're looking at. So Clemson last year, though, averaged 2.5 million viewers, which ranked 10th in the country. Okay. Florida State was just below that and ranked 15th in the country. Okay. So you got two top 15 teams to go with Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State that are also on that list. Now you're like, you see what I'm saying? Because Minnesota and Rutgers and Northwestern, nobody's watching those guys. I think they average like 200,000 per game, people watching them, which pretty much means their alumni was watching their games.
Right.
Okay. I mean, let's just call it like it is. And I know some people out there, Clemson's only that high because they played like Notre Dame. No, that's wrong. Clemson's game against NC State had a rating of 4.8 million people, which was one of the top 5 most watched games in college football last year. And the Notre Dame, by the way, was like 3.7 million. So Clemson Notre Dame did not do nearly as well as that one. By the way, Clemson Georgia Tech, 4.3.
Wow.
And that was Clemson playing a horrible.
Well, it helps when you're the only game in town. That helps on that.
But it also helps because why did people watch it? Why is Clemson on a Monday night? Why does the ACC want Clemson on a Monday night?
Because people will turn on their TV.
People will turn on their TV to watch Clemson because Clemson's a name brand. They're a powerhouse. This is what college football sees. Like, by the way, and then on the SEC, let's flip it to the SEC, because I'm sure you've heard this, Alex, because you're from the state of South Carolina like I am. I'm sure you heard the South Carolina fans say, SEC don't want Clemson. They already got South Carolina in there. That's all they need. That's the same. That's the same.
Same market.
Same market. It ain't about the market. It's about people who are actually watching the games.
It's about eyeballs.
And guess
It's
what,
not
South
about
Carolina?
market,
You
it's
only
about
averaged
eyeballs.
900,000 last year. You didn't even make $1 million. You had 900,000 people watch you per game. All right, so your most watched game, I think, was the Clemson game, actually, because you were about to pull off the upset. So everybody tuned in to watch, and you did. Give them credit. They pulled off the upset. But your biggest – South Carolina only averaged 900. So the SEC's looking at Clemson. They're like, well, man, you know what? That's 1.5 million more than people are watching than South Carolina. So now we can get South Carolina's million, and we can get Clemson's 2.5 million. Now we
have the entire state of South Carolina watching the SEC football.
Watching SEC football. So that's why. And the Florida's the same way. Florida State, they're like, heck, we get Florida State. We're taking up the whole panhandle watching SEC football.
Yeah, and then if you can add the cherry on the cake in South Florida, you get a nice other little boost too with another national.
Yeah, then you get that. So you got the entire state of Florida because you got who in the middle of the state? You got Florida and Gainesville.
Yeah.
So you got that whole area already. You own it, right? And you got the Jacksonville area you own. Now you get Tallahassee and you get Miami. You got the Panhandle. You got the bottom of the state and the Keys, and you got the middle of the state. Yeah, the SEC would love to have that. Are you crazy? If they can pull it off. These are things they're all thinking about and talking about behind the scenes. And
well, that's the other thing too, and you kind of touched on it. I think one thing that maybe people don't understand is the people who are making these decisions, they're not all football people.
No.
There are a lot of people who are wearing a suit and going to work and looking at numbers that could care less about what happens with the ball on a field that are helping make these decisions too and carry a lot of weight in those boardrooms. Mm-hmm. So that's another part of this conversation that I think is being overlooked. Is that a lot of this is strictly a numbers and revenue conversation, and the brand. Yeah, that works great. I think what you said is accurate. That the Big Ten would be more interested in Clemson and Florida State from a sports perspective, from a brand perspective, and from a recruiting perspective, and what's best for the schools. But for the SEC, I think it really comes down to dollars and cents and
that's
how many eyeballs are going to be on the TV.
There's no other reason. There's no other reason. I had somebody ask me today, I think it was Teddy Hefner. I was on his show in Columbia, and Teddy asked me, he says, well, Will, what about South Carolina and Georgia and Florida? I would imagine those three teams don't want Clemson and Florida State in. And I said, Teddy, you're right. They probably don't. But it doesn't matter because remember who didn't want Texas in? That'd be Texas A&M. What happened? Yeah. Texas A&M got in. I mean, Texas got in, right? So I think the majority of the SEC would vote Clemson in, would vote Florida State in because it's better for the league overall if it comes down to it. They're not going to do it just because Georgia's going to have a tougher job now recruiting against Clemson. Because let's be honest, the thing that's and I said this, and I probably made some Gamecock fans mad, but Clemson and South Carolina very rarely go up against each other in recruiting. It's not that common.
Yeah, I mean, Clemson happens maybe once a cycle on a player.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about the top players, of course. They don't go up against each other for top players. They don't. It very rarely happens. It happened twice this year. Kudos to South Carolina. They won both. But, normally it doesn't happen. Clemson, Georgia, almost every recruiting battle is Clemson, Georgia. It's always, if you look, it's Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama. Clemson, Georgia. It's the same teams. Clemson goes up against Georgia almost constantly all the time. And so, yes, Georgia uses, we play in the SEC to gain that advantage. And when they can, South Carolina uses it when they can. Right. And kudos to them. You should. But if Clemson gets that, now Clemson's in the SEC, Georgia can't use that anymore. Neither can South Carolina. Now you got to go beat Clemson. You got to go beat Dabo Swinney because you just got to be a better recruiter than Dabo Swinney. And it's hard to be a better recruiter than Dabo Swinney. Anybody will tell you that.
Yeah, there's nobody better with mama in the living room selling recruits.
I'll take Dabo Swinney over Kirby Smart in the living room every day of the week.
Yep.
I'll say if I put my money there, this is going to be what's going to get the guy to go. Then I'm putting my money on Dabo Swinney, not Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart, I think, is good with the coaches, and he's good with the
He has
Dabo
great
is
relationships
too.
with the high schools in Georgia.
Yeah, and Dabo is too. Don't get me
Dabo does
wrong.
too, yeah.
But Kirby, he doesn't have the same appeal that Dabo has. If you talk to the two guys, it's not even close. And now Beamer's got that appeal that Dabo has.
Yeah,
and I
Beamer definitely has the charismatic X factor in recruiting.
I
mean, and you
agree.
saw that in this cycle, beating Clemson out on 2 players.
Yeah, and they just landed the top, the 5-star defensive end yesterday. So kudos to them. Beamer's doing his job down there. Now the question is, how long does Beamer stay in Columbia? I really believe this. If Virginia Tech, and I know here we going off.
Well, if Virginia Tech is playing in the Who Cares 5 conference in 2 years, then maybe he doesn't. That's the other thing.
I don't know if he does, dude. But I'm just going to go just for what we know right now, living in the present. If Virginia Tech has a bad year this year, and there's a good chance they could.
Well, I know who their first call would be. I mean, they'd be.
I think they're calling them
not to be their first call.
And listen, if South Carolina fans, if you don't think Virginia Tech's not a better job than South Carolina, right now it is. Virginia Tech is a better job than South Carolina right now. The facilities are state of the art. They got a winning tradition where they've played and won at the highest level and have done it before, so they know they can do it. South Carolina's never done that. And then plus he's a Virginia Tech grad. And his dad coached there.
Yep.
You're crazy if you don't think he's not going to consider it. Yes, he's going to consider it.
He grew up there. He grew up there.
He grew up there. That's his home.
Yeah.
That's like me going back to Hamburg.
Would that be a real welcome home graphic?
That would be a real one. Yes, that would be a real one.
Went to Virginia Tech. That would really be welcome home.
Yeah. So, I mean, the only thing, like you mentioned, the only thing that could keep him from going to Virginia Tech is what you just mentioned. Yeah, where are they in conference alignment?
And that's going to be an interesting question there are schools that have winning traditions or that have, just strong athletic traditions, period, in the ACC that are on the fringe, like a Virginia Tech, NC State. They've got championship tradition in basketball. They have a passionate fan base. We talk about it all the time. I was talking with an NC State fan a few weeks ago about how, I would put Carter Finley on a Saturday night in the fall up against a ton of environments in the country.
Absolutely.
That's a fan base that really cares. They've got a great alumni base. But there are going to be schools like that are on the fringe of this conversation that are really going to have to make some decisions.
I really believe
what the future looks like.
Yeah, I really believe like Virginia Tech and North Carolina State, I think those guys go to the Big 12. I really believe
that seems like a fit with the moves that the Big 12's been making.
Yeah, I think the Big
it's
12,
like Colorado. It's like Colorado.
Yeah, the Big 12 has what's going to happen with the Big 12 is they're going to have to decide who they don't want.
Yeah.
All right.
Because they're just going out and signing anybody who will put their name on a piece of paper right now.
Right, because I think right now they're probably thinking, man, if we just would have waited another year, maybe we don't even care about getting Central Florida and those guys. Yeah. I'm being serious because you're about to have a Virginia Tech maybe come open in an NC State. And you got, if you want to really truly do the basketball thing, you could have a Duke or Virginia join your conference, and then you got some of the best basketball programs in your conference along with some pretty darn good football programs, right? So, they're going to have to make some choices because I don't think anybody wants to be bigger than 24. And I think the Big 12 has the best opportunity to get to 24 before anybody because their model fits these other schools that you just mentioned.
And their revenues, their revenue, when you add a bunch of schools that are, medium size, you give them like a good rating. If you were going, bad to great, you give them a good rating. And if you sign 20 of those schools or 24 of those schools, you can get a dang good TV contract.
Yeah, now and you can. And so here's the thing, though, and here's the thing nobody talks about. Because we talk about Clemson and we talk about Florida State and Miami and North Carolina, and we talk about an NC State and a Virginia Tech, teams that have had success at other sports or at football and are appealing, right?
But what about
then there's
Georgia
the schools that aren't appealing.
What about Georgia Tech? What about Boston College?
Georgia Tech, Boston College, Wake Forest. What do? Because they bring nothing to the table, which is why Clemson and Florida State are upset. Not at Wake Forest necessarily, because Wake Forest has at least handled its own, has built a pretty good little football program. They've taken the money the ACC's given them through the TV deals and all. They've invested in football and have made that improvement. So I'm not going to say Wake Forest is included, but Georgia Tech and Boston College and Syracuse. Now, Syracuse is going to get out because of their basketball prowess. But those schools haven't done anything to improve their situation. You see Pittsburgh's improved themselves. They've become a football power. I won't say power, but they've become a really good football program, you know, and kind of going back to their roots a little bit and why football is important to them. And Pittsburgh, you're talking about a team that would love to go to the Big Ten. Oh, my gosh, Pittsburgh would thrive in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I mean, really you'd have these traditional games, a lot of these traditional games that Pitt always played when they were at their prime.
But Pitt's not going to go to the Big Ten because Pat Narduzzi has just pooped on the Big Ten so much.
Pat Narduzzi might not have a choice now when it comes down to it.
But you look at those schools though, and you feel sorry for Wake Forest because Wake Forest has made the investments, but Wake Forest only has 5,000 undergrads. They got the smallest alumni base in the country. So they're not going to bring anything to the table. Like the question always is, how hard is it to find a Wake Forest fan outside of Winston-Salem?
It's hard to find a Wake Forest fan in Winston-Salem unless you're on campus.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's because you're in campus. So technically that they're there. But outside of campus, you're right. How hard is it to find? I was in Raleigh, Durham area for a whole week in May for the AC baseball tournament. I was there a whole week. I didn't see not one outside of the baseball stadium. So I'm like, when we go to eat and stuff like that, go to the store, whatever. I did not see not one Wake Forest fan the entire trip.
I think every Wake Forest alum in the country was in Omaha, though. I mean, when you watch the broadcast, I was like, I've never seen this many Wake Forest fans in one place.
All 5,000 of them were there. I mean, my point being is, it's like there's not many. It's hard to find a Wake Forest fan. It really is. Like, I saw Duke fans. I saw NC State fans. I saw a ton of North Carolina fans, of course. I didn't see a Wake Forest fan the entire time. You know, me and Jason Priester, he's with me. We're out there. We talked about it. I even brought it up to him at dinner. I was like, you notice we haven't seen a Wake Forest fan this whole time? And he's like, now that you think about it, you're right. We even saw Virginia fans. You know, it was crazy. So I feel sorry for Wake Forest because they have put a lot of investment in their athletic department to be good in sports. Like you just mentioned, baseball going to the College World Series. Basketball's on the way up. They're playing much better.
And they've built new facilities for basketball. I mean,
they've
football invested in their locker rooms.
And that new facility for baseball. I mean, all three of their major sports got brand new facilities.
Wake Forest last 2 years.
Yes, Wake Forest has done what you're supposed to. Boston College, they did build a new baseball facility, and it's pretty nice. But their basketball is crap. I mean, it's crap. If anybody's ever been there, and I have.
On the backside of the press box.
Yeah. And then their football's crap. They haven't done anything. Georgia Tech, oh my gosh, it's all crap. I mean, you know, they're now their arena that Dan Radakovich did 10, 12 years ago before he left is nice. You know, that's the only thing nice they got. They got a pretty good football indoor practice facility, but that's it. Their overall football facility is not that great.
The only problem with that indoor practice facility for football at Georgia Tech is it's way too close to that left field fence.
Yeah.
And I've seen way too many baseballs hit that thing that I didn't want to hit that thing.
Right. Yeah. So I agree with you on that. So that's kind of where we're at. And so I know before we get out of here, that's the thing I think a lot of people forget is like, what are those schools like Wake Forest, Connecticut, those kind of schools are going to do? You know, do they just become and how does a Rutgers win in all this? Of all the schools that wins, it's like a Rutgers.
And Vandy. Rutgers, Vandy. I mean, these
Northwestern.
Yeah, it's just right place, right time. Because they're not going to kick you out. You know, you're already there. They're not going to kick you out.
Yeah, you're grandfathered in. I mean, I think the Big Ten should kick them out. I mean, to be honest with you. but
they wouldn't lose any money in the TV deal if they got rid of Northwestern and Rutgers.
Yeah, 200,000 people watch you. I mean, okay, thank you. Thanks for playing. Minnesota. I mean, Man, thanks for playing, Minnesota. 200,000 people. You got a pretty good football team up there, Minnesota. You don't care? Obviously, they don't. They care about the Vikings. They care about.
Yep. Yeah, well, I mean, we could talk about this for 3 hours if we wanted to. I think when we talked before the show, we didn't want to talk about it too long. You know, we could only talk about it so long, but
we talked about it for 30 minutes,
45 minutes. So thank you to anybody that stuck around and hung in for that conversation. We're glad that you're with us on Off the Cuff. We're going to be back next week. This is an every week deal. We didn't even mention that Will, has a new job this week. We didn't even
I do.
mention that on the show.
I'm over at the Clemson Insider now, so check me out.
Homecoming at TCI for Will. So I think somebody on the message board this week said that the prodigal son had returned. So Will's back in the family.
And by the way, congratulations to Alex, who got a promotion at the newspaper he's at there. So congratulations, buddy, and proud of you. And I know bigger things are still to come for you, man.
Yeah, so it's good to be on here. I gotta head out over to a little American Legion baseball here. I got the Central Plains Regional being hosted here in Rapid City. So
I got to head out too. I got to write a preview story for fall camp. So,
well, give us a like on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube, like the video, give us some comments. Trying to gain some traction here. So it's been fun hanging out with you guys. We had a lot of people tune in, especially on Twitter last week or on X last week. So we appreciate it. But for Will Vandervoort, I'm Alex Dodd. Thanks for tuning in to Off the Cuff.